I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with Sonja Reynolds about her empowering book, Things I Wish I Had Known at 13 or maybe even sooner, A Girl's Guide to Girls' Stuff. She employs her wealth of experience and wisdom to illuminate the path of maturation for young women, drawing from a pool of seasoned mentors, teachers, and role models. She presents a roadmap of essential knowledge that she believes every young woman should be armed with, addressing the nuances of communication, guidance, and self-confidence. We are delighted to have Sonja join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Authors Tranquility Press for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like her by subscribing to our channel. Sonja, so good to see you today.
Thank you.
You know, we're not born or given instruction manuals at birth, although I think we should be. And particularly at 13, you need one because you're like, what the heck is going on with me? What the heck is going on with the rest of the world and everybody around me? So
Right.
tell me a little bit about why you wrote this book.
Well, I used to work at a youth camp, all-female youth camp, for a period after I got off active duty military. And once I left that position, I still wanted to give back because that position was just, it was life-changing for me. And I just still wanted to give back. So some years later, I started writing it. And once I started, it took me a while. I didn't finish it for some years.
Mm.
And then when I finally felt it was finished, then I started looking for ways to try to get it published. And here we are today.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you got it published. What was your life like at 13 or perhaps even younger that you said, hey, you know what? I wish I had known this then.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I was bullied. I didn't grow up with my mother and father. I grew up with my father's family, and there were a lot of traumatic and traumatizing incidents that happened during that time. And had it not been for those people that I give credit to in the book, some of my teachers, some of my classmates' parents, they were essential in keeping me grounded and kept me from kind of going the wrong way. There were plenty of instances where I could have turned out very different. I could have been a different person. I could have done very different things.
Mm.
But God instilled a survivor spirit in me, and He placed people in my life that kept me grounded enough that I kept going. But I always, I always thought this could have been different, and I wish I had known these things that would have made things a lot easier for me.
You know, it's hard to overestimate the importance of adults who are not your parents in your life when you are a teenager. You know, whether it's a friend's mom or a friend's dad or a coach or whatever it is, or a kind teacher, for
Mhm.
them to give you some bits of wisdom, to give you some guidance, you listen to them more closely than you listen to your parents. You kind of discount your parents as old and they don't know anything, that kind of stuff. But to hear it from another kid's parent, that's sometimes impactful, don't you think?
Right. Yes, I do. Yes, very impactful. Yeah.
What is the most important piece of advice you wish to share with young women rather through this book?
That what happens to you during this time isn't going to always be your life. I would have never imagined that I'd be where I am now when I was that age.
Hmm.
I kind of had a pretty uh, unpleasant view of my future because I was like, wow, is this what life is about? But I just want kids to know it's not going to always, it's going to turn out differently than you expect. And it's all based on the choices and decisions that you make, regardless of the bad ones that you might make when you're going through these teenage years. It can be better. It can be so much better.
I always feel also that it's the little decisions you make every day rather than the big decisions. The big
Right,
decisions, you kind of know they weigh upon you. You're like, oh, this is a big decision. This could determine my future. Will I go to college perhaps or not go to
right.
college or whatever it might be? But it's those little decisions you make every day that really have a lot of impact on your life.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
That is definitely true.
You mentioned that you were in the military. Was that a good force for you in helping you find yourself?
Yeah, it was, and it was unexpected because I had no intention of going in the military. When I graduated from high school, I went straight to college. Fortunately, I had a scholarship, and that was all I knew was go to college. I had some peers that were going into the military, but I didn't have a good picture of the military at the time, so there was no, that wasn't in my, that was not in my plan. But it was later on when I had to make some very important, those big decisions about what direction I wanted my life to go. And I really needed something stable. I needed something with an income. I needed some health insurance. You know, I needed a little bit of everything. And I made the decision to kind of not let my negative view of the military stand. And I chose something totally different out of character. I was like, it's very out of character for me to go in the military, but I went, and it was life changing as well, and it was a very positive force in my life because I learned some things about myself and about the world that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have had I not chosen to go.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Now, were you a little bit like Private Benjamin when you were in the military?
No.
No. Okay. You remember that movie, right? I think it was
Yes.
Goldie Hawn and
Yes. Yes.
she
Yes. Yes.
joins
No.
the army and it's a lot more than she ever expected, So
It
I know I would have
was.
been like, face down in the mud
Right.
and
Oh yeah,
sailing.
that some of the stuff that happened with her, yeah, it did happen.
Yeah.
Not quite as extreme, but it
Right.
was because, like I said, it was out of character for me to do that. And every day kind of was like surreal for me. I'm like, I cannot believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm making these decisions. How did this happen?
Right.
But on the other end of it, it was I'm so glad to stay that I made that decision.
When you were growing up and when I was growing up, we didn't have this.
Right.
And this is a force for good. It's also a force for evil. That's the
Evil.
digital age that we live in.
Right.
How do kids navigate the power of this? I mean, first of all, every misdeed they do is documented on this.
Right.
It's a tough time to be a young person,
Right.
don't you think?
Yes. That's kind of the other reason that I wrote the book because I put the chapters in there. Some of those chapters include social media,
Hmm.
and how it can, yeah, like you said, it can be powerful, it can be wonderful and magical, and it can also be very evil.
Hmm.
And there are ways to safeguard yourself as a young person. If you don't have an adult that's trying to keep you safeguarded, you have to safeguard yourself, and you have to be able to make those decisions that, do I really need to have a Facebook account? Do I really need a cell phone? And if I have a cell phone, do I need it to have all of these apps and all this extra stuff? Or do I just need a phone to communicate? And it's hard because you got pressure all the time. Well, why do you not have this on your phone? And why do you not have blah, blah, blah? And you want to you want to be accepted into certain circles, but sometimes that in itself is a very dangerous thing because you end up making decisions that are very unhealthy based off of what everyone else is doing. And it's very difficult to stand your ground and be your own person when you're a teenager and you're navigating all these what ifs and I want this and wanting to be accepted and wanting to be liked.
Hmm.
But sometimes you have to make some hard decisions that make you seem like a weirdo.
You got to be able to stand on your own, stand alone, break away from the pack. Like you said, some of the decisions you make at the moment might make you feel like a weirdo, but they're the right decisions to make.
Right,
Sometimes the right decisions to make aren't the easy decisions to make. So that's an
right.
important distinction for sure. Have
Mhm.
you given this book to any young people to read to get their feedback at all?
Oh yes, I've given a lot of copies to young people, and I've gotten some feedback, um, not a whole lot, and
Mhm.
it's kind of, I don't know, it's slightly discouraging,
Well, that's how young
but
people are, though. How do you like it?
yeah,
Fine.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. Or some of I got some really good feedback from a couple, and actually some of the kids that I counseled when I was at the youth camp, they have children now that are the age that they were when I met them. So I gave them the book.
Right.
And it's just difficult because a lot of kids they don't like books. They don't
Yeah.
want a book in their hand.
Yeah.
They actually were more receptive to the ebook, and I heard from one of the young women that that was how they found out about it. Was they had a friend that had read the ebook version and told them about it and gave them positive feedback. So I'm a book in hand kind of person. I like to have the book. I like the
Yeah.
pages. I like to turn them. I like to stuff
Right.
stuff in it. I like to write notes.
Right.
But and that was kind of like that was one of the heartbreaking things about actually finishing the book was how do I get it in people's hands and who actually really wants it in their hand.
Right.
So,
Well, if
but
you download it on your phone and read it like this, there's no crime in that. It's pretty
true,
much the
that's
same
true. I don't
thing.
care how they read it. I just
As
want them
long
to
as they
read
read
it.
it. Exactly. Exactly. One of the things you talk about in your book is mentorship and the importance of it and the significance of it in a young woman's life. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it kind so I guess as a young person, you don't go and look for your mentors.
True.
They kind of land in your lap. Um, and there's a there's a great feeling when someone wants to teach you and guide you, and you have to be open to it because sometimes you're like, what is this person trying to do? But I think your gut will tell you this person is meant for good, and they have my best interest at heart,
Mm.
and then to listen and go with it. I had teachers that I had never maybe been in their classrooms, but they just knew of me.
Mhm.
They saw things in me that I had no idea were in me. And they chose me to do things that I would never have done had they not said, Sonja, I think you would be good at this and you might want to try this.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, because I wasn't the sports kid. I wasn't the one
Right.
that was, I wasn't a cheerleader. I wasn't in all that. So the art clubs and I had this job as I forgot what it was called, but it was kind of like an escort type person. You wear your little jacket and you help people tear tickets at the games and people find their seats and maybe hand out some concessions or whatever. But it was a leadership role that I would have never considered had that teacher not said, you know what, I think you would be good at this. Um,
Exactly.
and just listening to those people it's going to help. It's going to keep you on the right path. Especially sometimes those people are put in your life to keep you on the right path because you
Yeah.
may be headed in the wrong direction. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
got to be
Yeah,
open to
I was a 6'5" freshman in high school,
it.
and the
Wow.
basketball coach came up to me and said, "You'd be great on the basketball team." And then he saw me play and realized he had made a profound mistake. So sometimes they don't get it right. I became a
Right.
thespian and an actor instead. That was a much better fit.
Right. Yeah.
But you're right though. The people who tap you on the shoulder during your life and say, "Hey, have you thought about this? You'd be good for that." It's enough to give you that little push to try something because
Right.
maybe you were thinking about trying out for the cheerleading squad or the
Mm-hmm.
debate team or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be, or taking an after school job. You
Right.
know, sometimes you just need that little gentle push to push you in the right direction. So again,
Right.
back to the importance of older people in your life who are not your parents, who can
Mm-hmm.
really be impactful and
Right.
make a change. How do you feel your book empowers young women to handle the challenges of being a young woman?
I think it's great
Yeah,
because
I
it
agree.
gives because it I look at things in on many different levels, and many different perspectives when I try to express them. So I just feel like when I talk about an issue, say like one of the chapters is about whether you want to whether you should or should not wear makeup. And when you get to this point where you want to do it, the right way to do it.
Mhm.
And it specifically asks the young woman to think about the issue and to come up with her own perspective of it and to look at it from different angles. Why would your parents tell you no, you can't? Or why would they say yes? Or if you decide to do it when they told you no, how is that going to impact you? And I love that at the end of each chapter, I have this area for them to explore and talk about how they feel about that subject so that they can break it down, get their ideas from maybe even another, a friend, and they both discuss it and say, what's going to be the best decision here rather than just making the decision. So it gives you, I feel like the book is a tool to give you enough information to make you work through things and think about them as in a positive manner so that you can make the best decision.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember growing up, my mom had on my bedroom wall what she called the Teen Creed. And it was like almost like a list of 10 commandments of what you should do and not do as a teenager. Two stick with me. One was choose your friends with care because you become what they are.
Mm.
And I thought that was very true. And the other was choose only a date who would make a good mate. And that's also very, very true. So relationships is what I'm getting at are
Mm-hmm.
important. You become what your friends are. Do you address this in your book and tell the folks at home how you address it and how you should address it with your children? If you don't like the crowd that they're running with, they think that they might bring your child in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I can't tell you exactly which chapter it is about that, but there is a chapter about friendships and choosing the right friends and
Mhm.
how they can lead you astray because that deep desire to be accepted can really put you on a very dangerous path. Um, it talks about if your parents don't care for your friends, you know, how to sit down and actually have a conversation and talk about the whys of that. And they may not agree, you
Right.
can choose to disagree, but, and it's going to be consequences in that. Um, Communication is just so vital in anything that I'm trying to present in the book. And when if there's not good communication in the home and you don't have that guidance of someone telling you or trying to guide you about the best ways to have relationships, there we go. We're back to the mentor thing. There's
Mhm.
somebody around that can still give you that kind of help and being open to listening. If you have a teacher that you really have a great relationship with and you pass that on to them and say, hey, my parents don't like Susie, and I don't get why. And hearing it from somebody else, it may just be the thing that lets you know, oh, well, maybe Susie isn't a good person I need to be hanging out with because our minds are not our minds when we're teenagers. And we're
Right.
not going to be able to decipher, okay, Susie's done some things, but maybe it's not that bad. But when you hear somebody else say, well, yeah, it is that bad, and it's not your parents,
Right.
and it might be even an older peer. If you're a freshman and there's a senior that says, hey, no, Susie's not the one, you may just want to listen.
Yeah.
So being open to communicating and actually communicating yourself, which can be very daunting
Right.
because you may feel like you don't have a voice. Um, but asking those crucial questions of the people that can give you good answers and give you a variety of answers, it's going to be It's needed. It's needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this book is great for young women, but I also think it's great for parents. I think they might not anticipate exactly what's going on in a young girl's head. You have
Right.
with this book, and you address a lot of the issues that, teens have to deal with. So a
Mhm.
mom or a dad reading this book would be a great opportunity to strike up conversations about some of those important subjects.
Yeah. And I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you said that because in marketing, I'm targeting the kids,
Right.
but I could be marketing it in very different ways.
Right.
And I you talk about your mom and some things
Right.
that happened as you were growing up. I remember there was a book at our house that was all about the reproductive process and what's going to happen. It was kind of like a birds and bees book.
Hmm.
And we had it at our house because my aunt had a pretty extensive library. I grew up with my aunt. Extensive library in our house. And I was always just pull books off of there. If I didn't go to the library, I would just pull them. And I found that book. And I was like, wow, I'm going through it. And then I put it back. And then somehow my aunt realized that I had read it and she hid it. She took it away from me.
Right.
And it made me feel dirty. It made me feel like I had done something wrong.
Right.
And that's why I included that chapter in my book about as much detail as I could about what happens when you end up getting your cycle,
Right.
why it happens, what your body is doing, and what it's telling you, what you can do. That was like one of the most miserable and horrible times in my life. And it
Mm.
didn't even have to be that way, but they wouldn't talk about it. And when
Right.
they talked about it, they talked about it in a way that made it scary and negative and a threat. It's just life.
Right.
And I was like,
Exactly.
that book could have been an amazing tool for us all to sit down and share that information together so that I understood what was going on.
Right.
But it was different. So
Yeah.
I don't want
But
another
part
reason
of
I
it
had a
is
chapter.
generational, of course, that parents
Right,
thought
right.
shielding the kids from sex would protect them from sex. That's
No,
part of it. But even in this generation, my kids are in their 20s and 30s. And they used to say to me, Dad, we learned nothing about sex in sex education other than you could get diseases and it could kill you. So, that's pretty limited. It should be about a lot more than that. It should be about love and intimacy and connection and so
right,
forth. Uh,
right.
but but going to a good public school, all he learned was you could get a disease and it could kill you. So it's crazy. So I'm glad you have written this book because I think that it answers a lot of questions for that young girls have. And like we said before, I think marketing to the parents is a good idea because
Hmm.
if I think back at that teen creed on my wall, I didn't
Hmm.
buy it and put it there. I'm
Yeah,
putting up Charlie's Angels on my wall, you know, but my mom bought it, right? So
right,
this is the kind of book that, I think if you have a child who's coming of age, you give it to your daughter and say, "Hun, why don't you read this?" Or you read it together and you have a
right,
conversation.
right.
Yeah,
And it helps because sometimes as a parent, because I'm not a parent, but if I
right,
were, I want every tool I can get to try to communicate and share with my child this information. If it's going to make it easier for us to do it this way, then I'm all forward because it's a hard thing. You don't have to make it hard.
yeah,
Make it easy as you can. Use what you have. Use every tool that you can because I think later children really they look back to those moments and they cherish them and they feel they're empowered because someone that really loved them gave them that information and they didn't find out the wrong information from another kid or from social media or from watching something on television. They
right.
got it from someone that loved them and it made all the difference.
Exactly. You don't want your kids getting the facts of life from TikTok. You want to
Right.
you want to tell them yourself. That's for sure. Tell me what it was like writing this book. I guess you had to do a little soul searching, a little time travel to put it all down on paper, right?
When I first started it poured out of me.
Hmm.
I was just 34. It was 33, 33, 34, somewhere around there. And it just poured out of me, literally. I probably did 16 chapters just back to back. It just poured out. And then it stalled because I got married.
Right.
And that was a whole nother, yeah. Anyway,
You could write a book about
listen,
that.
it was a
Stuff I
bad
wish I knew at
decision.
34.
Right, right. I
Yeah,
probably,
exactly.
I might do that.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Stuff
it was a
stuff I
bad,
wish I knew about before my first divorce. I
right.
think you got a whole series there.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it was a bad decision.
Right.
And it put everything on hold. But at the same time, I got probably 7 more chapters out of that experience. And even though I was, in my 30s when I finished, well, when I continued, well, when that period happened, I was in my 30s. I didn't finish it until, where was I? Oh, I didn't finish it until I was 50
Mm.
something.
So
But
this
I
book has
needed
been
that.
years in the making. Yeah.
Yes. And I was fine with that because I know that many people, their first book, it never even gets published because they're,
Right.
they just don't do it. They're afraid or whatever. And
Right.
I know people that it has taken them a long time to finish that first one. So I didn't care about that because the things that happened to me were still, they were important enough that I could include it into the book. Even though I was 50,
Right.
I still wanted a teenager to know, do not marry somebody just because the world is telling you you should get married and you should have kids. Society is pressuring you into doing that.
Right.
It is not for everybody. It is not always a good decision. No.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I can swear to that. We're all experts in divorce after the fact. So I think that's your next book. Things I wish I'd known at 34, things I wish I had known at 43. I think we got a whole
Other
series
people
going here,
have
Sonja.
done that. And
Yeah.
then that's the thing for me with writing the books and wanting to write more. It's like, has somebody else already done this? And this is just going to be redundant. Whatever,
Yeah,
it.
anything you can think of, there's a website for it on the internet.
Yeah,
But with that said, it's not your voice, it's not your thoughts, it's not
true,
your perspective. And that's what you
true.
bring to the table. And that's what's unique. And that's the
Thank
gift you
you.
brought to people with this book. The name of the book is Things I Wish I'd Known at 13 or maybe even sooner, A Girl's Guide to Girl Stuff. It is a great gift for a girl in your life. It is a great gift for yourself if you're a parent. It will make you reflect upon what it's like to be 13 again and all of the challenges of growing up in a digital age and the many temptations that there are, and how you can empower a young woman and make her life better. Sonja, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a huge blessing. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I had a wonderful time talking with you. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.